And to unpack the strategic dimensions of this U.S. policy shift and its implications for the conflict's future, we're joined by voices who bring unique perspectives. We're joined now by Dr. Vincent Ligorio, head of the geopolitical department at Analytica for Intelligence, who studies the military balance and Russia's responses, and will try to assess whether this move represents a turning point or a dangerous gamble. Welcome to Q News, and let me start asking you, sir, how is Moscow, in your opinion, interpreting the reports that the U.S. may guide Ukrainian strikes on Russian energy infrastructure?
Good evening, first of all, and thank you for inviting me.
Well,
first of all, I think that Russia is interpreting with a new change of the narrative. In practice, so the practical point of view from Russia is that this would escalate. And why? President Putin a few days ago on the Valdai Forum underlined that Tomahawk missiles and infrastructure is only possible to be managed by US from US bases. So Kiev doesn't have the capability and the logistic platform and infrastructure to do that. So this would mean a direct involvement and neither and direct involvement from United States. So this would allow Russia to, let me say, rise from the escalation and let me say target also other infrastructure, especially in Kiev. We know that Russia didn't target till now specific infrastructure in Kiev, and we know that they clearly say that they didn't do not to escalate. It was not in Russian interest to do that. But in the future, if this would happen, I think that we would reach such kind of escalation. In my view, in my analysis, this change of narrative and strategy from Washington is more devoted to allow Kiev to reach certain Russian infrastructure, especially that's related to oil, gas supply and refinery that are, let me say, not at the range of Ukraine drones nowadays. We know that now in Crimea there is a catastrophic situation with a contingency on the supply of gasoline with 20 liters per end, and this is due to the latest attack that Kiev delivered on this peninsula.
I believe we're joined also now by Her Excellency former U.S. Ambassador Kathy Bailey, who has long observed the U.S. policy debate over Ukraine and also its broader geopolitical implications. So, Ambassador Bailey, the Trump administration, welcome to Q News in the beginning. The Trump administration is shifting from skepticism to expanded intelligence support. What explains this reversal?
Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me and greeting from the United States of America.
Always a pleasure.
First of all, this is not at all an attempt to make a shift toward escalating the war in Ukraine. So let's be very clear on that. That's the last thing our President Trump, wants to be perceived as. He's a peacekeeping president. If anything, this perhaps might get Mr. Putin to the negotiating table. And let me state why I'm not a member of this administration. I highly respect the approach President Trump and his administration have been trying and taking and put this very unnecessary war in all their attempts and efforts in this administration to a close. It's also important to note he inherited this conflict and now has been put into position to help resolve from a very inept previous U.S. administration. And in spite of that, the strides President Trump has made have been being very engaged, not only in this conflict, but other conflicts around the world, has been beyond extraordinary. And I cannot say that enough. He is a peacekeeping president, and he looks for peacekeeping settlements in all these situations. Now, on the question that you have in front of us, I think it's fair to surmise this demonstrates the U.S. has strengthened our commitment to Ukraine, while keeping in mind the United States has been supportive of Ukraine all along. Let's start with defense spending. We were engaged in during the beginning of the war. With this week's announcement that you're reporting on, we're seeing further assistance provided, which allows Ukraine added benefits to help win this conflict that they have been engaged in way too long. I mean, you look at this, we're going back to February of 2022. When we enter February of 2026, we'll be coming up on 4 years. So our president is very committed to see a resolve.
Let me ask you this, Ambassador Bailey. How does the expanded U.S. intelligence support align with America's strategic objectives in the region?
I think it aligns very well. I mean, we're very engaged, and we're a NATO allied country. We are very together with our allied partners and friends in the region. So it aligns very well. I mean, if you see, just with the situation with Ukraine, for example, the United States, since the invasion, has been the largest single provider of military aid to Ukraine through the flow of support through various areas. So we're very committed, obviously, with our friends and partners.
Dr. Ligorio, what does this shift tell us about Washington's readiness to directly influence Russia's internal infrastructure?
Well, I think that the Trump administration is underestimating the readiness of Russia and the Kremlin, first of all, to over-escalate this. And this is unfortunately is given for a lack of expertise in the current administration. And the first Trump administration, I personally know colleagues that warn of this, the president and his staff. Currently, there is a lack of expertise on Russia and how Russian leadership change the shift. We have to consider that despite President Putin is president already for more than 20 years, his leadership is more than already 25 years. But Russian leadership changed internally. So the shift inside, the shift of the the elite that controlled Russian leadership dramatically changed during this conflict. So we have to consider also this, because we have as audience an idea that there is only one person in control in Russia, but this is absolutely not true. And it's important to take into account this. So we have not to, especially American partners, have not to under-evaluate the potential of over-escalating, especially now with the new shift into the new narrative. And this is very game-changer aspect that the hardcore leadership, part of the Russian leadership, would not accept.
Okay. Ambassador Bailey, how does Donald Trump's approach compare to President Biden's caution against targeting Russian energy infrastructure?
Well, he's very actively engaged at all levels. He has a very competent defense Minister of War, our Defense Secretary of War, Secretary Hegseth, is bringing a lot to the president and, the entire support that the president has at his leadership because as I stated earlier, you cannot ever underestimate President Trump. We saw this through a previous administration. We're seeing it through this administration. Just as recently as what we saw within the last 24 hours between Israel and Hamas, the agreement that came together, Donald Trump gets the full credit for that. So, the ability to continue to support Ukraine.
Donald Trump gets the full credit, Ambassador. What about the mediators? What about Egypt, Qatar, and other mediators? Just to mention.
No question. Other people have come into play. Absolutely. I did not disagree with that. But it has been a tremendous effort on President Trump, our commander-in-chief, to lead the way on these efforts.
Okay. Dr. Ligorio, from your perspective, is the United States crossing a red line by actively directing Ukrainian strikes?
Well, as I said, the White House has to better consider, if this is just a switch into a new narrative, or let me say,
will come to action.
Come to action, because Russia is ready on daily change of narrative from Trump administration. But I'm sure, by my expertise and my knowledge of the last years of working also with Russian colleagues, that Russia preferred the Biden administration in this matter, in controlling. Because Biden administration was the devil that they know. They know that the rhetoric, the narrative was the same, straightforward, so they knew what to expect. Trump administration, the first Trump administration, and currently the second Trump administration demonstrated this is impossible, to follow one line, to follow one narrative, and to be sure that what is agreed will be kept. So the word agreed, the agreement found will be that one forever and ever. So this is a very, very important for Russian. And a signal that Putin sent to Trump, it was a bit, let me say, not considered by media, but for us knowing very well the Russian administration, knowing well the Russian establishment, at Valdai forum a few days ago, President Putin highlighted that Russia sold uranium for $800 million last year, to US, and for 2025 will count on 1.5 billion. What does it mean? This means that there is still space for cooperation, and still the US administration is, let me say, dependent
considering the mutual interest between the two countries.
Yes, right? Exactly. So this was a signal that hidden signal that President Putin sent to Washington, and we that President Putin is open to discuss with Trump other dossier, other issues in terms of bilateral cooperation. So we have to be again very careful on what we are considering, if it's an action plan or just a change of rhetoric. And Russia is very afraid of this.
Okay. Ambassador Bailey, do you see intelligence guidance as crossing into direct U.S. involvement in the war?
I don't really want to speak to that. Again, I'm not a member of this administration. I've just been observing, like everything else, the developments that I've seen. But if I could, just address your other, guest here on the show, I think we have to keep in mind that the beginning of this war in February of 2022, President Putin and Russia were the aggressors. They began this war and thought it was going to be a 3-day war. And here we are all these years later. So, the United States has been there from the beginning. as I stated, where we started out with our funding and we've continued to be supportive. We've also branched over into humanitarian aid for Ukraine. We're there to be supportive, to help Ukraine get through this war, hopefully in a peaceful resolution. And I'm hoping, because of the latest developments, if anything, and I'll repeat what I said earlier, that hopefully this will get Mr. Putin and Russia to the negotiating table.
Dr. Ligorio, how do you assess the divide inside Trump's team, some favoring escalation, others doubting its effectiveness?
Well, I'm not, let me say, a very expert into this knowledge into the administration, so it would be very difficult and dangerous for me to comment. But we know that in all the administration there are different souls. I would define, as I say, even into Russian administration there are different opinion, different direction, and different form of leadership. This is the politics. This is what's happening in democratic countries as the US, the UK, Italy, and so on and so forth. So I don't see as let me say a dangerous aspect or a dangerous sign that somebody into the Trump administration disagree with some of the action that President Trump is taking. I would say, is even positive that somebody disagree, because there will be more room for discussion, for thinking if the action taken will lead U.S. into crossing the red line or not.
Mm-hmm. Ambassador Bailey, Zelensky has welcomed talks about Tomahawks. What political risks does Trump face if he approves such transfers?
Again, you're getting into an area where I'm not a member of this administration. I'm not privy to how those talks are going. Other than I think, going back to how we initially started, this is, an attempt to try and really give and aid Ukraine what it needs to be able to engage and hopefully resolve this conflict. It's gone on way too long. Way too many lives are lost. When I look at the number of Russian soldiers that have lost, over 200,000, I would just think, even from a humane perspective, the president of Russia would be very concerned and would want to negotiate, getting to a point of finding resolve to a ceasefire, to be able to put this war to a close.
Okay. Dr. Ligorio, Russia has seen 16 of its 38 oil refineries attacked since August. How significant is the economic and military impact on it so far?
Well, the economic impact, as I said, in some region is quite relevant. As I say, in the peninsula of Crimea is evident and is leading to a supply crisis that the local government, the regional government is trying to solve, but it will take several weeks. So there is a contingent that is working on that. There is a restraint on sales, as I said, 20 liters for end, and not all the stations can sell it. So this is quite relevant for a region like Crimea. We know that it's very strategic, even for this conflict, this region, and the support of the people is quite important. We know that there are other issues within other regions, so it has an economic impact, because the cost and the price, the cost for Russian economy and the price for people is growing, because there is, let me say, a bit of people are becoming moody on that. They are. We know that Russians are not very, let me say, open to protest, to riot, to go on the street. Historically, this is evident. But when they are touched financially, economically, when the wallet is touched, they are quite, let me say, nervous and moody. So the economic side is quite relevant. That's why the switch into a new narrative where Ukraine would be allowed to reach other regions, far region, and certain infrastructure would make Russia think if it's not the time to escalate to another level. If you say that now we are on the second level of escalation with massive attacks on every week with hundreds of drones and missiles, I think that the third level of escalation would lead to a very catastrophic result for Ukrainian infrastructure, and I think for everybody, because this conflict would be, first of all, avoided 4 years ago, and could be end even before, and the responsibilities are from both sides, let me say.
Yes. Ambassador Bailey, in what ways could NATO allies' involvement in intelligence sharing shape this new chapter of the conflict?
Well, I think you're hearing the discussions that our president has had with the head of NATO and other NATO countries and what they can be doing to also, be providing additional support, whether it's intelligence through, military assistance, etc. So I think all that, all those conversations, again, I'm not a member of the administration to be privy, but just of observations from like yourselves and that we're all reading, both here at home in the United States and around the world. I think those conversations are going on. And hopefully we will see, the continued support of not only the United States, but our friends and partners within the alliance.
Okay. Dr. Ligorio, the Kremlin officials call this a serious escalation. So what types of responses could Moscow consider?
Well, first of all, use strategic weapon. This would be the response of last resort, but even attack infrastructure and certain buildings in Kiev, or even escalate going over Kiev. We know that the western part of Ukraine is quite in control, so it's not under attack already since the beginning of the conflict. And I think that even on the ground, something massive would happen. As I say, currently, if we have to give a scale from 1 to 3, we are on level 2 of escalation. Leading to level 3 would be catastrophic in terms of human loss, and this would be really catastrophic, and pity if we could not prevent.
Okay. Well, I'd like to thank our guest today, former Ambassador Kathy Bailey. Thank you so much. Dr. Vincent Ligorio, thank you so much. I'd like to thank you both for your valuable insights on this very complex and fast-moving story. And as we conclude, the widening scope of U.S. support for Ukraine marks a critical juncture with unpredictable consequences. Stay informed as this evolving conflict continues to redefine global security. I'm Hala Al-Hamalawi, and this brings us to the end of today's episode of Think Tank, which always, of course, unveils the complexities of our changing world. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned for more updates here on Qnews.